Welcome, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Seary. I'm the Executive Director of Communications and Development at Foundations, Inc. Foundations is a national education nonprofit. We're located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and our mission is to improve the quality of education by strengthening the skills of educators. So we really work anywhere there are adults working with kids. We work across the school day, in after-school programs, in classrooms, in districts, and even at the state level. You might already know us from our signature professional development experience, which is the Beyond School Hours Conference. Our conference is held every year in February, and in 2023, we will be in Orlando, Florida, February 9th through the 12th, back at the Rosen Center Hotel. So last year we were at the Carib. This year we're going to be at the Rosen Center Hotel, which is a great location. So we hope that you will all consider joining us. The registration is open. Early bird ends at the end of the month. So please take advantage of that early bird rate. I'd like to welcome you to another one of our Beyond School Hours follow-up webinar series. This one is sponsored by the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. And we are so lucky to have one of our amazing Foundation's education specialists with us today. Shanika Peck is going to share some essential steps for activity planning that you can use immediately in your programs that will have a bigger impact on student learning. So thanks, Shanika, for being with us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that great introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so as what Elizabeth mentioned, we are going to talk about some practical techniques that you can use to support your program's performance, more specifically that activity planning piece. Now, I do want to just touch base on what I currently do. So I'm an education specialist for the Center for After School and Expanded Learning. And at the center, we do a lot of things to support a lot of out-of-school time programs. We also dibble-dabble a little bit in school day programming as well. So we offer trainings and workshops for both small and large groups in person or virtually. We also have an evaluation and coaching services that take a different spin on data-driven approach to assessing the effectiveness of 21st CCLC programs and other after-school programs. And we also offer a lot of tools and coaching to support that continuous improvement process. We also dabble in designing program content to support high-quality program implementation. And what we're going to do today is go over, I'm sure like some of you have already joined a couple of webinars that focused on a lot of engaging activities that you can implement, especially if you joined us for the Aligning with the School Day. So today we are going to emphasize what makes an engaging activity. We'll also go over components of building an activity. And of course, you will receive some tools and strategies to help you plan. Now, just to give you some background on myself, I'm Shanika Peck. I'm an education specialist. Now, before my work with Foundations, I actually taught in an extended year-round boarding school for inner city kids in Trenton, New Jersey. And there I was lead teacher for the primary school and then also an intervention coordinator for the residential program for our middle school students. Now this summer, I noticed that we have a couple of people from Philly. This summer, I was a program director working with Philadelphia's Youth Network's Summer Work Ready program. So I wrapped up my program with a few high schoolers, getting them ready for career, planning a lot of career exploration activities. So super excited to be here with everyone. And being that we have so many people from all over the US, this is a great opportunity to just collaborate, share ideas. So please, please, please take advantage of that chat box. Today, we will use a couple of features on Zoom, especially the annotate tool. Of course, we're going to use our chat box, right? So if you are a chat box warrior, please, please use the chat box. We are going to monitor that, and that will be incorporated into a lot of the activities we'll do today. Now, let's get started, right? Some of you told us who you were and where you were coming from, but let's dig a little deeper, right? Tell us a little bit more about you. So using that annotation tool at the top, select which statement here applies to you, right? So you can use a stamp, whether it's a smiley face, a star, heart, whatever your heart desire. Go ahead and choose which statement resonates with you the most. So is it, I went to an after school program, you love school, maybe you hated school, but you end up in education, right? If you were with us with the aligning with the school day, maybe you learned about learning modalities. I know about standards. Oh, look at that. It's great to see that everyone loves school, right? Awesome. And if you notice that you don't, actually, if you want to add a statement, you can add that to the chat box as well. Great. Pamela's super excited about starting planning activities, right? A lot of us are probably 2 to 3 weeks into the school year. There's probably still brainstorming, right? This is awesome. I love seeing all these hearts. All right.
Can I just ask you, how do you get them on this? How do you get them on there? Like in a particular block?
If you go to the top where it says you are seeing my screen, it should give you like this drop down option. So let me go back.
Oh, annotate?
Yes, annotate. You click on that and then you'll see a couple of things to choose from.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah. When I was what was that?
Something new every day.
Yeah. When I was teaching fourth grade during, the whole COVID crisis, I used the annotate tool. They went a little too crazy, but it was definitely fun to use. Look at that, right? That's awesome. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to move on. And like I mentioned before, you probably have already started, your program, or maybe you are an educator who's a part of the school day. So let's think about what that looks like for you right now. So we have this comic strip. And as you're looking at this comic strip, I want you to think about what's resonating within you the most, right? So here, that was me this morning. Coffee, I need more coffee. I've got a curriculum to follow for 5 grades. I'm running out of ideas. They're all different ages. They're all different levels of understanding. How do I hold the interest of these kids? If I don't get a good lesson plan ready for tomorrow, I'm going to freak out in front of the whole class. That would definitely hold their interest. Now, me personally, the beginning, when I was in the classroom, I'm always like, just have my cup of coffee ready to go. But never enough ideas, right? Look at that. How many of you can identify with is like, this was definitely you, the beginning of school, right? What are we going to do? We are yes. So some of you are feeling overwhelmed, right? Sometimes that coffee isn't helping. So you are bringing anxiety to the table, right? Along with your list of things to do. Yes. And I'm happy that you are here with us today, because hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll have at least a couple of tools to help you feel less overwhelmed and less likely to freak out in front of, your group of kids. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on from here. Now we are going to have another activity here. And what I want you to do is find the first item you see near your body. And you are going to come up with 10 different uses for that item. So for example, I have this old piece of fruit, this banana. I got to come up with some ideas on how to use this, right? This is the only thing I have that can help me plan some activities for my group of kids. What am I going to do with it, right? And if you'd like, it would be great if you can just turn your cameras on. If you found that one thing near you and you'd like to share, go ahead and turn your camera on and just show me. What do you have nearby? You have to come up with 10 things. What are 10 things you can do? Now, off the top of my head, I'm thinking about 5. Oh, phones, lots of technology. And some of you may have kids who you can't get their phones out of their hands. So how are you going to use it? Right? If you have technology, maybe you're thinking about, Kahoot is a big thing, but here I have a banana, I have a piece of fruit. So I'm thinking maybe a sensory bag. Maybe if I'm working with a younger group of kids, I'm thinking about how we can utilize our 5 senses. Can we feel it? If we do feel it, what does it feel like? The smell, the touch. Maybe I would use this banana as a free write exercise, right? That's always a good go-to. If you want to take it a step further, maybe we're talking about adjectives. How would you describe this banana other than it being spotty and wrinkly, right? Maybe I would talk about the life cycle of a banana. Maybe we'll take it a step further and talk about GMOs, right? What are the pros and cons of GMOs? Did you know this is not what bananas naturally look like, right? There's a lot of things you can do. Did anyone find something else other than a piece of technology or a fruit? What are 10 things you can do with that item? And of course, use your imagination. What can you do with that? Anyone like to share? Raise your hand if you had a piece of fruit too. Maybe food. I always have a piece of fruit on my table. Do I always eat it? Not really.
Well, I have a bag of grapes.
Ooh, okay. What can you do with some grapes?
Well, I do have a book, a lesson plan where you can talk about where different fruits originated from, and the history of that fruit.
Ooh, yes.
And then you can make a dish with that fruit, or find out maybe who's allergic, who can't eat fruit, who love fruit, what type of fruit kids like. If the fruit, like these are grapes, what other fruit start with a G, different things.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Those
Yeah.
are great ideas. And some of you have water bottles, right?
Yeah.
You can talk about what makes the best water bottle, right? We can definitely turn this into some kind of science activity. Does coffee count as food?
That's a good one.
Right?
Yes.
That's an engaging question for your students, right? I remember I had a couple students ask me, because they were all into Starbucks. These were a bunch of 4th graders. They're like, well, my mom never lets me have coffee. Why can't I have coffee? Like, does it really stunt my growth? Or are they lying to me, right? So, you're giving the students a chance to be inquisitive, ask questions. A Lucy doll. Karen, you want to share? I think, was it Karen or Katie? Someone had their hand raised.
It was me. It was Katie, and then I meant to click it off. But when I used to teach, I taught middle school English for 20 years before coming to work for the Department of Education in Michigan. And when I left, my co-teachers gave me this pineapple squishy. And I think sometimes we forget to tap into the social emotional part of our kids' learning. And so we could talk about what this is and typically what it might be used for, and then, get that part, like what are some of your stressors or things like that, or what do you do to cope when you are having a moment where you're frustrated, or things like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I keep this on my desk.
Yeah. Right. Or we can model those different things that help us stay calm, right? Calm, cool, and collected. Right. So activities like this can be a little challenging for some, maybe not so much for others, but what you really want to do is think about how this can relate to your work, especially as if you're working in a team, right? So you may have a strength in coming up with all of these ideas, but maybe other members of your team don't. So I definitely encourage a lot of collaboration when it comes to planning these different activities with your students, especially with what you have, right? We may not have access to a lot of materials. How can we make do with what we have? Is definitely something we want to keep in mind. Now, as youth development professionals, we have to connect to the youth using their interests, their skills, and different content areas so that we can design more engaging activities, right? So we're not thinking about those icebreakers to hook them in, but more importantly, we're being more implicit about or more intentional about the program and activity planning that we are creating. So what we'll do is we'll look at 4 basic steps for today. We'll start with know your youth. Then we'll brainstorm some ideas, some planning and implementation of these activities. And of course, we're going to do some reflect and improvements. Now, as I mentioned before, we'll go ahead and add some tools for you all to use right away in your program. So let's think about characteristics of youth. Now, on the slide, I've identified some characteristics of older youth and younger youth. In the chat, please indicate whether this characteristic is classified as a younger or older youth. All right, so we'll start with this one, beginning to accept responsibility. Could be both, right? So these are generalizations, right? Can be younger also, right? Depends on the child, right? That's good. Next one, need to exercise choice and responsibility, younger or older. Oh, you guys are right on the money here. Yep, it could be older or younger in some cases. Anastasia, thank you for bringing that up. This may also depend on the household, right? We're also thinking about culture. What about independence? Again, this could be both, right? And if we're tying into that, the family dynamics, you may have younger children who are more independent than others, right? Or, right, age, yep. And of course, that depends on the situation, right, Rita? Peers are more important than adults. Is this younger or older? Right. I don't know if you guys have heard of this before, but you know, the older kids usually vote with their feet, right? They're always following their peers. And when it comes to certain things, now this again is a generalization. It may not really resonate with the older group or certain students or an individual, but we often see it with our older kids. Needs greater structure, and we're talking about routines. So the age ranges I'm thinking of is older would be 6th grade and up to 12th. So 6th through 12th grade, and then younger is anything below 6th grade. Yes, younger, they do need it more. Yep, and sometimes, you know, they may be aware of certain routines and structure, but they would always ask you what's next, what's to come, just to, you know, feel secure, right? Like I had a group, they always ask me, well, when's snack time? And I'm like, it's at the same time every day. That hasn't changed, right? Yep, visual, especially if you have like some kind of procedure chart in your program or your classroom. All right, what about this? Less demand on their time. It could be older, but then you also have to think, you know, are they a part of sports? Right? Do they have any other engagements outside of the school day or their after school program? Could be both, right? And then have competing demands on their time. Could be older. All right, let's see if we have, that was a unanimous vote right there. Again, it depends on the household. Yeah. Right. We're thinking about, well, maybe you have older siblings that have to babysit, so they can't really spend most of their, free time doing something else. They may not have enough free time. I think this is it. Need and seeks approval from adults. Right, Donna, you brought up a good point. Balancing their schedules, right? Also working with prioritizing. Yep, younger. They do care more, right? They're at that stage where they want to please you. They want to make sure they're doing everything that, you approve of. Most. I wouldn't say for all. Right. And that's it from there. So as I mentioned before, a lot of these characteristics are generalized, right? It may serve for younger and older, youth, but typically you may see that older youth have more competing demands on their time, especially during on the season. So as I mentioned before, they may have babysitting responsibilities. The high schoolers I was working with, a lot of them had other jobs and responsibilities outside of programming needs, right? They may have practice after school with sports, things like that. With older youth, they go from manager or teacher to a coach or a facilitator. So peers are possibly more important here and there, but it really depends on that individual, right? And then, of course, we have, our younger students, right? Most of our younger students, they need or seek approval from adults. And unless they are not a part of like those dance troupes or activities like football, community football games and teams, they probably have less demands on their time. So in the chat box, you can also add what you know about typical students' lives, right? So we're thinking about things that may affect them outside of the school, maybe outside of programming, such as sports, babysitting, any family responsibilities. Is there anything else that we need to keep in mind, or maybe some characteristics that we need to keep in mind as we plan for activities? You can go ahead and drop that in the chat. Doreen brought up a very good point here, right? Shared custody, and I see this a lot. So it may not be a responsibility. Maybe the students have to split their time between two different households. That can be a lot for a child, but that happens. Yep. Well, Marie, you brought up a good point too, how parents will be involved. Yep. Parent engagement is always a big piece. You guys brought up some good points. Body development. This is all great. And I hope, you are taking notes on what is happening in the chat, because again, this is a great opportunity to just share ideas and collaborate. Yes, we're fostering adopted children, right? Their lifestyles are totally different. Some kids might have health issues. Yep. You have to think about that as well. So great points. All right. Now let's talk about connecting with students. So consider kids' developmental needs for these daily and weekly activities as you plan your activities. So if you're thinking about physical activity, right? And from our experience, we can see that physical activity can be done virtually or in person, maybe hybrid, synchronously, asynchronously. I've seen people host 15-minute dance parties, workout sessions, especially if you want to start a YouTube channel and get more kids involved physically there. I've seen jump rope challenges and push-up challenges. You also want to think about achievement, right, in various academic and non-academic areas. You also want to think about how you can connect kids into thinking about their self-definition, right? Who are they as an individual? What are they going to do? What is their role in life? And a lot of this requires them to think beyond what their parents want them to do or what they normally see in their community. Creative expression, right? That's their ability to use their minds, stretch their imaginations, and create something that represents who they are. I've seen a lot of great art programs that allow students to use music or visual art or writing, photography, acting, drama, or movement as an outlet for their creative expression, right? We're also talking about social interactions, right? How they act and react towards other. You may even also tie in that conflict management piece. You want to think about structure, right? Need to know what is coming and what they can expect. And of course, meaningful participation. So remember, for certain students, you have to think about their attention span, right? You want to give them ways to engage and ask many questions as you can to keep them engaged and provide different ways to respond and support them. So we are going to keep that in mind, and we're going to brainstorm ideas as our next step. So how many of us have experienced a Category 5 storm or something close to that? Right? If you're thinking about a Category 5 storm, you're thinking about anything is possible. I see a lot of videos with storms happening on the beach, right? Lots of wind, water. If you're in certain areas, you may see things that don't normally fly, take off flying, right? So you want to think about brainstorming as a Category 5 storm. So what we're going to do is I'm going to drop the link in the chat to my Padlet, and we are going to brainstorm some ideas that we can add to different sections. So we're going to focus on community, current events, youth interests, life stage events, school day content. A lot of you guys are 2 to 3 weeks into school, so maybe you have an idea of what is already being said around your students, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share my Padlet. Give me a second. Now, in the meantime, let me go ahead and, oops. All right. There's the link to my Padlet. Let's go ahead and brainstorm some things that are happening with our students here. Did everyone get that link for the Padlet? If you have that link, go ahead, join my Padlet, and just start adding different topics you can talk about in these different categories.
So I, again,
You want to click the link that I sent in the
well,
chat.
that I did. I got that, but I missed the directive as to.
Oh, so sorry about that. So
okay.
once you open up Padlet, you are going to click this plus button. You're going to add some ideas, right? So in this case, we have community. Someone added family fun day event. So you would just add that in there. Family.
Yeah, no, I understood. I understood how to work the document. I just didn't understand what we were putting in here.
Oh, different ideas that you can come up with.
So
based on the
okay.
So I see a lot of checks. If you want to add some ideas in that category, go ahead and click that plus sign. You're going to add a post to that category. Soccer for Success program. Right, let me add that in there. You just hit publish, right? Let's see how much we can come up with. What about current events? What is happening with our students? Stephanie, yes. I believe there will be a recording, right, Elizabeth?
Yes, there is a recording. Absolutely.
It seems what you have on screen and what we're seeing in the Padlet are totally different. There's a lot of ideas in the Padlet and they're not showing up on this.
Give me a second. Thank you for bringing that up. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's live.
Yeah, that's much better.
That is, I'm so sorry about that.
That was me typing all that stuff in there.
Let me refresh. Maybe we'll see more here. Ooh, I had to refresh. Look at that. Wow. You guys have a lot. So, woo, you guys did a lot of work, right? So community, we're thinking about environment, right? Youth and teen health fairs, which is really important. Transportation, wellness events, volunteer opportunities for both high school students, right? It'll be great to have high school students in elementary schools, right? Talking about organizing food drives or warm clothing drive, service projects. Service projects, are you thinking about, PBLs, project-based learning? If not, you can tie that in there as well, right? Food, desserts, after-school clubs, the list goes on. Yes, that's a huge current event. And I actually had a couple of students ask me too about, the Queen's impact on a lot of things that has happened in the past history, right? Of course, gang violence, Black Lives Matter, Hispanic Heritage Month starts this month, right? Into October. So what are we doing for that? Student activism. These are a lot of great ideas that you can use to help jumpstart your program planning activity. And being that you all have the link, you can always refer back to this Padlet and just, take some ideas down. Youth interests, right?
This will be a running document.
Say that again?
This will be a running document.
Yes, this will be up. I'm not going to change it. Won't take it down. It will still be there. So as long as you have that link, you have access to it. I know I had a couple of students talk to me about the new Ariel movie, right? Mermaid coming out next year and what that looks like for representation, right? Learning loss is always a big thing. All right, so we did a lot here. And like I said, you'll have access to this always. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back. All right, now we have our Category 5 Brainstorm. And of course, if you are still working on adding more ideas to that Padlet, feel free to do that. But I'm going to focus on one idea, right? Let's talk about movies really quick. So how can we come up with some sub-activities for movies? Now here I already pulled out 4 possibly, right? We can talk about book clubs, reviews, or selling at concession stands, and students filming their own ending. So for those of you who are ready to move on with the presentation, you can go ahead and go into the chat and share different ideas that you can add to book clubs when it comes to movies. Right, book club, I had a couple of students dress up like their favorite book or their favorite movie, right? Yes, favorite characters. What are some other ideas you can use or sub activities you can use in book club? Ooh, act out the scenes. Cosplay is my favorite, right? Especially if you have students who are into manga, they love the cosplay conference. Maybe you can host your own, right? Read a book and then watch the film or talk about the differences, compare and contrast. Yep, discussion guides are important, right? If you want to reiterate some content from the classroom. Yep, alternative endings, right? Interview a family member or have that family member read, right? You can also think about reviews. What can students do with reviews? Yeah, review green eggs and ham. Yes, family history. Awesome, these are great ideas. They can review their favorite part. Now, if you're thinking about the movie theaters in general, what can students do with concession stands? You can definitely tie in some math here, right? Ooh, someone mentioned college essays, which are really important, especially if you're working with students who are in 11th grade, right? Getting ready. Ooh, someone mentioned what students agree and disagree with in professional reviews, right? Or filming their own ending. Themed food concession stands, right? Maybe your program or your classroom is hosting a movie day or movie night, and you have your own concession stand, right? You're raising money, and that'll be a great fundraising opportunity. Yep. Absolutely. Or you can have a special viewing of those alternate endings, right? There's a lot of things you can do. Yep, creating your own character that would fit into the original story, or maybe not fit. Maybe you would add a character that would just change the entire ending altogether, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to move on, right? We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the planning and implementing piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a tool in the chat box about an activity planning template that you can use in your program as well. Now, while you are accessing that and downloading it, you definitely want to be intentional with your activity planning, right? So you may think about how you can impact an academic intervention activity such as homework help or tutoring, or maybe you are thinking about changing up an enrichment activity such as STEM initiatives, or if you are working with an organization on Passport to Manhood, there's also something called Smart Girls, right? So planning, when it comes to deliberate planning, definitely know that what students are learning in school. You want to use that knowledge to set clear objectives and definitely outline activities that can align to those objectives. And last but not least, don't forget to reflect and revise your activities as you are completing them. So what I added to the chat is that activity lesson planning template. And this is a great tool to use just to fill it out, right? So we can generate all of these great ideas. Now it's time to just make it a little bit more meaningful, right? Let's flesh it out a bit. This activity will take up how much time? What grade am I working with? What tools will I need? What targeted skill will I need to focus on? Can I work with the school day if I'm an out of school time professional to get resources that can help me prepare, right? What goals should I focus on? And then towards the end of that document, you'll see what you can do. And we'll talk about that portion in a little bit. Now, let's go back to the movie idea, right? So we talked about movies, right? So we're going to pull out a name for this activity and we'll call it Movie Kids. And our Movie Kids is targeted for our 3rd through 5th grade students. And we are saying that they will watch and review an age-appropriate title bi-weekly. Now, what I want you to do in the chat is come up with 1 or 2 goals or objectives that can support this activity. Yes. Ooh, see how characters evolve over time between stories, right? Maybe we're comparing, contrasting characters, identifying themes, yes. You can also focus on the plot. Vocabulary is a big one, especially if it's reoccurring throughout the story or movie. right? Character actions. These are awesome. Let's see, identify conflict, right? We can definitely identify different pieces to a story, right? Oh, we can tie in geography, analyzing characters. Yes, absolutely. You guys have some great ideas. I just had two basic ones, right? Students will compare and contrast their thoughts about the movie against real reviews. This is something that someone mentioned earlier, right? Do they agree or disagree with that professional review? Students will also write a review for the program's blog, right? So maybe you are helping those students, fix or enhance their skills to writing, and maybe you can incorporate that into just having them take the lead in your program's description, right? So that brings us to writing objectives, right? Or learning goals. So you want to think about what is your aim. So for example, if students are learning about fractions, you want to think about fractions, but be more specific. What about fractions you want them to learn? Maybe it's, the relationship between half, quarters, and a whole. And when you're thinking about that, you want to include how the learning will be demonstrated. Maybe you have some manipulatives, right? Maybe some measuring spoons to show how to convert a quarter, a half to a whole, right? You also want to include who will learn, right? So what I'm going to do is add in the chat another resource to help you map out some possible objectives. And this will help you brainstorm. What I like to do is work with a team. So as lead teacher, I worked with either grade level teachers or it could be a grade level below, including a grade level below or above, and just think about how these objectives can connect and grow over each year. So you can use this tool to help lead discussion if you have a PLC or a meeting with your staff about activity planning. So as we're thinking about objectives, we're going to go back to our idea, our movie kids idea. And now we are going to think about some academic content, right? So what kind of standards that can be addressed through this particular activity? And some of you already highlighted this earlier in the chat. Right, so what other content standards can be addressed with this activity? I'll give you another minute. You can add that to the chat. Someone mentioned persuasive essays, right? Different forms of writing. And then when we're talking about writing, we may be talking about writing format, right? For example, are we writing in paragraphs? Right? And if we are comparing something, what are we using? Are we using different media? Someone said math and statistics for movie attendance. Absolutely. So while you're doing this, fun activity, you're thinking about different contents that can be addressed with this activity. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to tie into different learning modalities, right? So I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. We have an idea of our activity. We have our objective. In this case, we're saying our standard would be write for different purposes, right? So maybe that persuasive essay or describing characters. How would this activity be conducted? Will there be opportunity for students to move around? What are some other learning modalities we can implement in this kind of activity? If you have visual learners, maybe you would have, of course, the movie, maybe seeing clips and talking about it. What else?
So we're talking about showing a movie, not discussing a movie that they've seen outside, correct?
Actually both. You're thinking about what's the best way to teach this kind of activity. So for some students, maybe they're thinking about the movie that they saw outside of school and they're talking about it, maybe presenting on it. Making a movie poster promoting it, right? You're giving them something physically to do instead of just sitting and talking. Yep, that's a good one. Maybe if you want to have your kids moving, you would have them act out different scenes. Ooh, TikTok. That's a good one. Maybe you want to incorporate different media. That's a great point you brought up, Katie. It is important that you assign a movie that is accessible to all, right? Show clips in class. Yep. Yeah, yep. And what I've done in the past is that if it's a movie that we've all seen, I would probably use storyboardthat.com and have them recreate their favorite scene using some kind of that digital platform. So they are recreating the characters and what they look like. Maybe they're focused on different speeches. Yes, making a connection to real life, right? That experiential learning piece, super important. All right, so at the bottom of that activity planning template, and I'm going to drop it in the chat one more time, you'll see a section that highlights the 5 E's. Are you all familiar with the 5 E's? There's a 5E model, a model of lesson planning. If you're familiar with lesson planning, if not, we're going to review that really briefly. No? Great, we're going to review it. So this is based on the findings of Atkin and Karpus. And what they did was that they created a model that focused on allowing students to understand a concept over time through phases. So these phases include engagement, exploring, explaining, elaborate, and evaluate. And so when students are engaged, you may have students telling or showing what they already know about this topic, or you may have students reflect or ask questions about this specific topic just to engage them, right? You want to hook them in. The next phase is to explore. So yes, students may look at models or a demonstration. In this case, maybe it's a movie clip, but you can also have students unpack a problem with that particular clip or whatever it is that you are modeling, right? You may also have students explore by gathering some kind of data. When it comes to the next phase, you may do something as simple as, turn and talk to a partner about what we are seeing, right? For older students, you may ask guiding questions such as, how does evidence support this theme in the movie, right? In the next phase, elaborate, you're thinking about, well, what can students use to help them further explain ideas? So maybe they're reading articles or watching more videos, or possibly investigating some real world connection to this topic or activity. And then, in the next phase, you have evaluate. So normally in out of school time programs, you don't have a real focus on evaluation or an assessment for students, but this can be something so simple as journaling or self-reflection. And this will actually help students understand their learning process of this particular topic. And like I mentioned before, the breakdown of the 5 E's can also be found at the bottom of that activity planning template that I shared in the chat. All right, so the typical breakdown of, the 5 E's model may be something like this, right? So you may spend 2 to 5 minutes engaging the students, right? Depending on what it is that you have them doing. You may spend 5-10 minutes exploring something. You may spend 10 minutes having them explain, another 10 minutes elaborating, and then evaluating, right? And then the key to this is just to make sure you are having fun, right? Give the students an opportunity to just explore, whatever piques their interest, just zero in on that, try to pull from that for them. Now, what we're going to do is, again, we're going to focus on that topic I brought up earlier, movie kids. And we are going to identify what this activity can be placed in according to those 5 E's, right? So we have our movie kids, and remember, this activity is for 3rd through 5th grade, and we will have them watch movies and review an age-appropriate title bi-weekly. Let's say I have kids make an alternate ending using video. Would that fit into our engagement, exploration, explanation, elaborate, or evaluate? You can use the chat. So which of the 5 E's does this activity identify with? Explore. This also can fit into evaluate, right? It depends. Yes, it can fit into all buckets. It depends on what you're going to do. So if you would also like to just beef this activity up, you can share that in the chat as well. Yeah. Now the next one. Kids get movie dollars to exchange for healthy snacks at your concession stand. Would you place that in the engage, explore, explain, elaborate? Right? This one too, right? I really like this for the explore piece. And then this can also tie in money, right? Do you have enough for the popcorn? Lately, items on the concession stand in the movies is just at a ridiculous price, right? And what about this activity? Kids write and create their own movie trailer. Would you place this in engage, explore, explain? I see elaborate. See a lot of elaborate and engage. Awesome. Yeah, it can be an all, right? Now for this next one, I'm just gonna clear our screen. Kids analyze and graphically represent concession stand sales. So we're thinking about math. I agree with you, Pamela. This can be used as an evaluative or an assessment, right? A light assessment, informal assessment.
I just heard today that New York is trying to impose a bill where the sugar content needs to be disclosed on an every other week basis. And the menus, or every 3 weeks, the menus have to be submitted for any, I don't know what the exact criteria is. So maybe that's something new that they can look at, what their value, the snacks that they have at the stand.
Oh, right. You can think about the
Nutritional,
breakdown.
the nutritional content.
Yeah, definitely tying in nutrition is helpful, right? There are a couple of out-of-school programs that focus on nutrition. You can definitely tie that in here. Yep. Yes. Let me clear my screen. So that was just a very brief overview of the 5 E's, and you guys did a really good job with sharing, the different buckets. Doreen, that was a great idea that we can also add to our list, right? What is happening in our state that may affect what students are seeing in the real world, right? How are you going to bring that back into your program or your classroom and tie it into your activity planning? Just for now, we're going to close out here, and I want you all to think about, which area of the 5 E's would you like the most support in developing? So maybe you're thinking about different ways you can alter your activities to increase exploration. And again, we're talking about engagement, evaluate, explain, engage and evaluate. Now, remember, evaluation doesn't have to be formal, right? It can be informal. If students are able to talk about what they've learned, you can still use that as an evaluation piece. And if you are working with school day professionals, you are able to share how students are progressing, right? You can give them that proof. Awesome. All right, and I believe we've made it to the last phase, right? Reflect and improve. And this is something that I like to use with my staff, right? When we are thinking about what is working and what needs some improvement, it's really helpful to have like a quick checklist, or maybe a next step document, so that you can see what you can make some improvements on, or maybe something's working so well for you and you want to share it. What I like is to, when I'm planning an activity and it works, it's an activity that's suited for that grade level. If you're planning as a team, it's great to see how that activity is implemented. So maybe you want to do some peer evaluations. Maybe you take turns and watch this activity unfold in a different setting. You can use or borrow some ideas. You know, it always gives you a fresh perspective on how this activity can be implemented, especially from your team, right? In this document, you can also keep in mind on how students are reacting to this activity. You can also think about things that you can add or change, like I mentioned before. And at the bottom, you know, what are other topics to cover? So during you brought up what was happening in New York State, you can use this document to add what else is happening, right? That may affect this activity or incorporate more of that real world connection. Super helpful. All right. And then as we're wrapping up, that was pretty quick. I want to leave some words of wisdom with you all. This is something that actually helped me get through a lot of tough times, right? Expect the best, plan for the worst, and prepare to be surprised, right? There's a lot that can go into activity planning. In the beginning, it may be overwhelming, but what we did here today, we came up with some great ideas, and honestly, we can just take this activity and just use it right away, right? You have those tools and resources that I shared in the chat. I'll share it again just to make sure you have it. It seems like everyone definitely understands what makes a successful and engaging activity. We touch base on the 4 components of building an activity. And again, as I'm mentioning it now, I'm adding those tools and different strategies that you can use when you're planning your activity. And of course, if you have any questions, or you want to reach out to me and, you know, bounce some ideas off back and forth, maybe you want to reach out to me and talk about what foundations can do for you, please feel free to send me an email, spec@foundationsinc.org. Thank you everyone for your participation. That was great. And I believe I'm going to send it back to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Shanika. This was really great. And it's so appropriate for this time of year too, as everybody is, you know, getting back into programs and school has started. This was really helpful. If anybody's interested in any of our free resources, I know Shanika put a bunch in the chat, but they're also available on the Foundations Inc. website that you can check out and download for free. We would just want to thank everybody for your time. We really appreciate you spending an hour with us on a Wednesday afternoon. And I hope that you will take a minute to fill out the survey because we really appreciate your feedback. We also want to thank again the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation for their support of our webinar series. Join us again next week, and we hope we will see you at the Beyond School Hours Conference in February. So it's again February 9th through the 12th at the Rosen Center Hotel in Orlando, Florida. So thank you all so much for joining us. Hope to see you again soon.